Hello, I want to do another little art update. So as of a couple days ago, I'm totally done with all the art for chapter 11 of Heroic Shenanigans, which is exciting because there's only 3 more chapters left I have planned, which feels like we're so close, and it also feels like there's so much work still left to be done. And then as far as the story, I have it pretty much scripted out. I had a few weeks ago, I had this moment where I just was like, I can't go to bed until I like finish writing this out. Like it was like this weird, like kind of anxious state where I was like, I have to finish this. And I stayed up till like 2 in the morning, which is kind of late for me, and wrote out at least a first draft of like the last couple chapters, the ending. So that feels good to have that. I mean, I've kind of had it in my head for a long time, but actually, and there's probably still things I'll tweak and things I'll add in, but having it actually like, okay, there's a document that has like this written out now, it exists, that's like reassuring, I guess. Like, okay, I'm actually gonna get here. So then my next step will be to sort of do thumbnail sketches of the next couple of chapters. So there's chapters 12, 13, and 14 are what's left. Chapter 12 is totally like sketched out in different stages of like sort of thumbnails and rough sketches. I kind of like, I'll go back and forth with like what kind of process I use for that. For a long time, I did little thumbnails, like each page was maybe like this big on a piece of paper, and I'd have several pages on one page of thumbnails, and I did that for a while. And then over the last couple of chapters, I just started skipping that and was doing sketches just straight in the page file digitally, which kind of felt like it was saving time, but I don't know if it actually was, because then I was doing the planning, like the thumbnail planning stage at the same time as doing like a more refined sketch, because sometimes I'll tell myself like, okay, I'm just gonna like do like, oh, here's the head, here's the body, like really quick sketches, like just rough in like where the characters are gonna be. But when I'm doing that like full scale on the page, my brain just kind of defaults into like, okay, now let's add some more details, like let's draw their whole face. And then that kind of ends up taking up more time, because I mean, I would be doing that stage of sketching eventually, but sometimes that can then cause you to take more time, because if you sketch in a lot of details and then want to change something later, like you just wasted time doing that. But yeah, that's just like a part of the process where like I instinctively want to, when I'm working in like the Clip Studio file, I'm like, okay, this is like the final, this is what it's going to look like. And then if I'm just drawing on paper, and I'll even do it in pen sometimes so that I can't erase, it's like, okay, let's just like get the rough gestures in. And like sometimes, and like I really don't have fun doing that part. Like it's weird, like I always dread that, but then I look back at them and I'm like, oh, there's so much life in these just quick gestures and expressions that I can then try to translate into the final drawings. This is weird because I want to add in, when I'm working on it, I want to add in as many details as I can so that I don't like forget. But if I do that, then if I get too lost in the details, then you lose kind of the big picture of like, okay, what's this overall page's composition? Like, how does that flow? And not just like, let's make sure for this little sketch, their nose is in the exact right place, like that, or like even do their hair. And like, I mean, I'll do like little details of their hair so that you can tell which character it is, but it's like, okay, you don't need to do like every single detail that needs to be there. Like you don't even need to draw their clothes. Like, but yeah, I have a hard time with that, with doing the rough sketches. So kind of, so basically all that to say is chapter 12 right now is in various stages. So I go in, so I've inked the first 3 pages. So I go in to ink a page, and sometimes it's like, okay, I can just start inking right away. This sketch is ready to go. And then some of them are a lot more like loose and gestural, so that I need to go in and do a refined sketch over that. So it's kind of in different stages, and the different stages are kind of mixed together. It's not like I really should do, okay, thumbnail sketch, like more refined sketch, and maybe even another sketch after that. I know some, depending on the artist, some may do multiple sketches, and I don't have the patience for that. I'm like, okay, it's on here. I want to add the inks as soon as there's a sketch. But yes, all that to say, it's kind of hard to judge like what step I'm on, I guess, because the steps are kind of blended together, if that makes sense. But basically, I do want to, yeah, the next thing that I'm working on is the inks for chapter 12. And then probably before I'm totally finished with that, I would like to have thumbnails for the next 2 chapters all done, like at least some form of sketch. Yeah, and another thing I've started doing is just putting the dialogue, the text into the file and not even drawing anything yet. So I'll still think in my head like, okay, there's probably going to be like this many panels, and then so then I can at least know like roughly how many pages are going to be in the chapter, because that's another thing, because I don't want to go, because my first 2 volumes are like pretty big for trade paperbacks, I think. So I don't want the last one. I want the last one to be about the same size. Like I don't want it to be super huge, because then that costs so much to print, and then I have to sell it for a price that probably no one's gonna want to pay for it. So, and I just don't want to have to draw 300 more pages. I'm ready to check this story off my, not check it off my list, like I'm just checking a box. So like this is, I mean, this has been a big experience in my life, but I am ready to have this completed, and which is exciting, but also daunting, because I think, oh my gosh, there's 3 whole more chapters to draw, which I've drawn more than that already, but I still get kind of stuck sometimes and think like, oh, I've been working on this page for hours. Like it feels like when you're working on it, it feels like it's never going to get done, because you can only do so much at a time. Like I want to, you know, be faster at it, but that's just not how it works. And you know, you read other comics, and obviously reading comics is a lot faster than making comics. Like this is like duh, but you have to think about it, because like I'll get stuck in reading something and think like, wow, it just looks so effortless, so easy. And then it takes, but I'm like, I don't know how many hours they spent on this, maybe more than I do. And I'll be like looking at art and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to like memorize this in my head, like how they have like the anatomy looking and stuff, and like making sure, like, you know, if you look at a panel that has like, maybe it's kind of zoomed out and the characters are smaller, I think like, okay, they're not super detailed, like their limbs are kind of just there, like it's maybe not like the most like intricate, perfect anatomy, but it still works. Because like with comics, you don't necessarily want every panel to be like this intricate illustration. I mean, some are, but you know, because people are going to be reading through and like spend a couple seconds maybe on each panel. So the perfectionist tendencies in me, I have to like kind of let that go and think like, okay, this looks good. It doesn't have to be like, this is every consecutive panel doesn't have to be, this is the best thing I've drawn. Okay, now the next one's the best thing. Like it just has to function. And so I'll be looking at someone else's work and think like, okay, I can see maybe some shortcuts that they took and it still looks great. I could do that. And then when I'm actually sitting down working on my own stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks horrible. I don't know how to draw. But then I look back at it later and think, okay, this is a lot better than I remember when I was working on it. So I guess my brain's in a different state when I'm reading something than when I'm, or like looking at something than when I'm working on it. Even if it's my own work, I can come back to it later and be like, oh, wait, I drew that. I don't remember it looking that good when I was working on it. So that is like reassuring, but it is still a struggle to actually work on things sometimes, because I just think like about how much there's left to do and it just gets really overwhelming. But it's not going to get any less overwhelming if I don't work on it. And even if I get just a fraction of it done a day, do that every day and soon it's going to be done. That's just what you have to do. Some advice for any sort of big project that anyone's working on. So that's where I'm at in Heroic Shenanigans comic world. So thanks for listening to this other update, and I'll catch you next time.